Howdy, guys. Welcome back to the RedAss podcast. Today is Monday, July 1st. We have officially entered into the sports dead period. Uh,
The second half of the year, though.
it is second half of
We
the
we made it halfway through 2024.
year. I know it has been a crazy, crazy 2024. No question about it. But I'm Rob White, fighting Texas Ag class of 2014.
And I am Roy May fighting Texas Yankee class of 2015, and I am not under the weather.
No, that would be me. So I'm sure y'all can tell I'm a little stuffed up this morning, coughing. So if that's going on during the podcast, I will do my best to limit that. But we will be doing our best to get through a lot of other fun things. So there's been a lot of developments in the last week since we last jumped on the podcast.
Well, let's do this since it's July 1st. So we're halfway through the year. Let's do a quick little year in review. So let's talk about kind of everything that we've been going through, right?
Sure.
So obviously there's excitement. We ran through two just from a fan perspective, great seasons on the Diamonds, right?
Right.
Softball was a ton of fun. Obviously not in that locker room, but unexpected from the outside perspective of SEC softball. I think it just shows you what Trish Ford is building over there. You know, on top of what we saw with commitments that she's received, we obviously know she knows how to work the transfer portal, and so softball was an absolutely wildly pleasant surprise to follow this spring. Baseball, best team in Aggie history.
No
They
question.
they accomplished more than, I mean, you're talking about, you got to play in the final game of the season. Didn't go our way. But it's I mean, it was just so much fun to watch, and the individual accomplishments and then the accomplishments as a team. So that was all, I think, just an absolute blast for us as Aggies to watch. I mean, there was maybe one or 2 days a week when you didn't have baseball or softball to watch. And when you did watch them, you were pretty confident they were going to do well.
Yeah. No, they had certainly looked the part this year. I mean, it was a ton of fun to keep up with both diamonds. No question about that. For that, especially on this podcast, we had a lot of fun with it. But yeah, softball and Trisha Ford and their crew, really proud of them, and as well as of course our players for baseball. I mean, every single one of them, I mean, laid out and busted their butts consistently to get
Yeah,
to.
so many people play, and I know that, as the season progresses, in any sport, people are going to be dinged up, but that dude's really playing on one leg and playing hurt, and still just kind of leaving it all out on the dirt.
Yeah.
Also we had our first Elko spring football, right?
Mhm.
And so we're well into that, and he's just picked up another commitment, yesterday,
Right.
big time linebacker commitment from out west. So yeah, football seems to be, looks like they may crack the top 5 recruiting classes here shortly, with a couple more announcements pending over the next week or two, I believe. So if you're a recruiting junkie, I know you're completely dialed into all this stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, so I mean, what a fun spring, right?
Oh yeah.
And even we had a handful of Aggies qualify for the Olympics.
Mhm.
Because you got the Olympics coming up in a couple of weeks. Isn't that right?
Right.
A couple of weeks?
Yeah, coming up pretty quick.
Yeah, so Olympics coming up in Paris, and I believe, I'm not sure if he qualified or not, but if Sam Bennett is going to be at the Open, I'll be out there cheering him on.
Yeah.
But so just a ton of fun this spring. I think it's hard to deny. I think it's evident by the amount of new softball and baseball fans that we have now, right? Because baseball and softball, you're always going to have the diehards, and it doesn't matter how they're playing; they'll always show up. And we're definitely a baseball school, but to see both baseball and softball just swell with support, and then recent events, obviously, have some of that support swell a little bit more on the baseball side.
Well,
Uh,
and not to mention, I mean, just the amount of money that is now being opened up on checkbooks from A&M donors who are now just seeing it more or less as an opportunity to stick it to the folks across the way in
yes,
Austin. And God bless the A&M fan base. If we are good for anything, we are good at being extremely petty, and I'm okay with that.
and I'm glad you just came out and said it. Like, this straight up is just because we're pissed at Texas. I mean, and it's not 100% that I get it, but the initial reaction absolutely is just a pure disdain and hatred for Texas, right? And honestly, more of a stick it to Schloss kind of thing. but I also think as the emotions can, as people get to sleep on it for a couple of nights and they think about it, I think that that money is still going to be there because, again, this swell of support that we saw for baseball, the knowledge that there will hopefully in a couple of years be a lot more season tickets available for that swell of support. Um, and so there's a ton of excitement around the baseball program. We did our little thing after the announcement last week. So now that the smoke has somewhat cleared, I don't know if it's smoke is cleared or if just the nuclear fallout has completed. Uh, yeah, we can no longer see the mushroom cloud in the sky. Um, I think we got to turn our eyes to Michael Early and this baseball team because we can talk softball, but softball is just kind of on they're on the tracks barreling down, right? Like getting commitments. Trisha Ford's doing what she's been doing since she's been here, and so we'll address softball at another time. But obviously, the elephant in the room is baseball. Um,
Yeah.
So it's come out, and it doesn't sound like we're ever going to get full disclosure, but it's come out and basically given all the kind of damage control that it looks like it's coming from the Texas side and journalism and Texas former players. I think it's pretty evident that there was obviously something very nefarious going on as far as the timeline's concerned. They're never going to come out and say it because there are actual implications if you admit to stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to mention like people owing people even more money than they already do.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're ever going to get the full story on that. Maybe years and years and years down the road, there might be a 30 for 30 and everybody spills the tea and we all get to just basically say, I told you so. Because again, like you said, we do excel at being petty.
Yes, and at this stage of the game, I mean, as we look back at this baseball team and this whole sequence that happened with Schloss, I mean, was it slimy the way it went down? No questions about it. I mean, I love the fact that he comes on yesterday on SEC Network and says, I knew it was going to be nuclear. I didn't know it was going to be apocalyptic. And I'm like, brother, when you leave the very next day after competing for a championship to go to a rival school with one of the most passionate fan bases on the planet, you didn't think it was going to be absolutely apocalyptic? What were you
Yeah,
thinking, dude?
there was probably a way that they could have gone about it to make it better, but again, it's still going to be a nightmare. That's not just between us and Texas. There's plenty of scenarios where something like that happens and it just turns into a wasteland. But yeah, the the self-awareness is just staggering. But that's never been a school that's really had a very high mark of situational awareness to begin with. And normally it's because it's like can't see the forest for the trees. Like
Mm.
they don't realize their lack of situational awareness because it's clouded by their extreme hubris and arrogance.
I think the thing that was so funny to me was last night. So it is July 1st, which means that officially our fine friends from Texas and Oklahoma are now in the SEC. And Texas was so gracious at this edition that they welcomed themselves into the conference on Twitter. You know, the level of arrogance, namely, in terms of how a lot of the other SEC fan bases are viewing this already. They're looking at this like I mean, they're already irritated at Texas. I mean, it took a couple of years for the SEC to start kind of getting on to A&M about the things they didn't like about us. It took some time, you know.
There was definitely a grace period there. And what I think is so funny, I think RCB put it out. There was a tweet years back. Some sip was like, I've never in my life seen a school make their logo or make the SEC logo bigger than their logo. And this about conference pride and this about conference affiliation. And like they don't understand it because they've never been affiliated with a conference. They've just been the conference and expected everybody to kind of kneel at their feet. Um, but the reality is like they're in a conference now that doesn't care who they are.
No.
This was a strictly transactional deal. This wasn't because somebody had this emotional longing for Texas to be in the SEC. This is a business move and transaction, and they're going to find out real fast. And some of the things I've been seeing them saying is it's just the hubris is kicked into overdrive right now. I mean, they're about to strip the flywheel. Those gears are going so bad, but it's this is a business transaction, and as soon as they realize that they're not going to walk in and win 3/4 of the conference championships first year.
Yeah.
And some of the questions that I've seen asked and answered, it's fascinating. Like I've never thought. And I get that this, we're Texas crap that they've always said, but like you're just another school in the SEC now, and until you can do anything, like that's just how it is, guys.
There's been one title won at that school in the big sport that they care about since Vietnam, 2005. Oklahoma's got one title going back to 2000. And fact of the matter is you're coming into a conference, which at this stage of the game, everybody does have a target on your back, not because you're sitting here as the best team coming into the conference, but because you have allowed yourself to be put on that pedestal, because you do love the attention. You love what you're getting here. You're getting the focus. I mean, they estimated somewhere upwards of 1 million people or so yesterday were around and about on campus during this SEC celebration.
No.
Just in, I don't necessarily agree with all that. That just
Well,
seems
apparently the police department reported 30 to 40,000.
woo
So close.
close.
You know what 1 million people looks like? Like, are you really going to tell me that's 1 million people?
Million people. 1
Whatever.
million. I mean,
Whatever.
think about it. Austin's standard populations of 5. It was like 900,000. Not counting the actual like metro, but still 1 million people.
It's just, again, it's fascinating. But let's move on to our baseball team.
Yes.
All right. And so now it's come out that obviously we took a swing at Vitello, and it sounds like it was multiple days. Like he didn't just straight up say no. It sounded like there was at least some back and forth, which I think should tell you the caliber of the position here at A&M. For a dude that just won the first national championship at his school, to more than just field a phone call, I think speaks volumes of Texas A&M baseball and this program where it's headed. And its lineage as well. I didn't think Vitello would ever come. I was really hoping O'Connor would get here. It just sounds like he just wasn't moving.
My brain initially, when the names are being thrown around, I threw a few names out there on Twitter, not the least of which was like Matt Deggs and a few others, but one name that did catch my eye was Dan Hefner, and it was unfortunate in my head that he pulled out, because I think Hefner, especially considering who his assistant was, Cliff Pennington, longtime Aggie and MLB player, and not to mention has really locked down a ton of really good recruiting in the state of Texas. Frankly, I don't think that would have been a bad move. That being said, though, I could not be happier for Early to be on campus again. I'm glad to see that he's back.
Well, it sounds like he was given an opportunity to interview, and when interviewed, he just absolutely crushed the interview. This is really what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And they were talking about it this morning, and there's always been talk about it since the announcement was made. Everybody has their first head coaching gig, right? The fact that it's at a bigger program, I mean, that's a bit of a swing. But Tennessee, Tennessee's an SEC school, and they hired an assistant. So this is a low risk, high reward thing for a guy that absolutely loves A&M, has been in the program, understands it. And so I'm down with it. Like if he's our guy, then he's our guy.
Yeah. And you're seeing, based on the reactions from the players already, and the fact that we've already had 2 pull out of the portal, including Hayden Schott, including Ali Camarillo. And I have a feeling, based on posts that I've been seeing, it seems to me that that's not going to be the end of the train. I think we're going to see a vast majority of the guys who hit the portal come back home.
I think there's going to have to be some NIL movement, on the higher end guys. But Billy said it this morning. There's not going to be any sort of like mass exodus to Texas, and we're not going to see a mass exodus out of Texas to here. Like we're not swapping. Like we're not swapping rosters.
No.
So that'll be telling how many players follow him to Texas. And I'll be interested to see where, I know Texas had at least one decommit in baseball.
Right.
And then they've got what's his name in the portal. It was Big 12 Player of the Year, and he in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's some interesting names there. But again, it may be we're going to go in the portal and just see how we like what we hear, kind of thing, before they hop back in.
Yeah.
Portal's obviously so fluid, and with head coaching changes, both of those rosters have a little extra time to get into the portal.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of how all of that shakes out. I haven't heard anything about Hensler, the transfer. I haven't heard positive or negative. I really haven't heard anything about him, whether he's sticking to coming here or not. He's been committed here for a year.
I believe so. I mean, there were a couple of guys that came out immediately that were like, "We're sticking around. We're coming to A&M." There hasn't been a
I
lot
know
of.
that Garvin, I can't remember what his name is. I know he already said he's locked in. I had a lot of the recruits locked in.
Mhm.
And I think what's interesting is what we saw, even while we were waiting for a head coach,
Yeah.
was the pitching staff. It's like they made a concerted effort to let everybody know that they're not going anywhere. And I thought that was really surprising in the sense that, and again, I'm not inside the program, I'm not around the coaches or the players. Um, but I thought it was really surprising given that all the success that Max Wiener had with the staff, that nobody wants to follow him.
Yeah, that it might be a bit telling on. I'm not sure what level. Once again, we're not in the locker room, but maybe there's a little bit of disconnect there that we didn't know about.
Well, it's either a disconnect or he knew.
Yeah.
He was one of the ones that Schloss told.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, I have nothing to dispute that claim. From everything I've heard, and I at least have some decent connections still, just because, just the ability kind of who I know and who they know kind of thing. So it's third party information, so you take it as you will. But
Right.
from everything I've heard, Michael Early was kind of just got the bomb dropped on him about this whole thing occurring.
Yeah.
And I think that really has to play into it, because we had a question on Twitter just asking about it. Not having the guts to stand up, a week ago and go to Texas. Um, that's a really tough situation, because I don't think he knew ahead of time. And so when the bomb gets dropped on you, the things you have to consider in that like very specific moment are, you have a family. There's
Yes.
no guarantee you'll have a job here at A&M with the next coach.
Exactly.
And so I think it's unfortunate that he didn't have much of a choice, because him standing up and not going to Texas doesn't necessarily mean he remains an Aggie.
Yeah.
So that's just it's a tough situation to put a coach in, in that short of period of time. And so I'm sure all of that weighed on his decision to go, all right, well, yeah, I mean, I'll go, so I have a job, right? Because there's absolutely, generally in baseball, just the whole staff gets turned over.
Yeah.
And when you new coach, new staff. In football, obviously, because there's a lot more coaches, you see some, a lot more that are going to end up staying with the new regime. But in baseball, there's so few coaches, you have to think about it as coordinators. And generally, when a new head coach comes in football, both coordinators are changing, right? And that's how you have to look at it in baseball, because there's so few coaches. I mean, you have a pitching coordinator, you have a hitting coordinator, you have a defensive coordinator, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
I mean, well, and then you have Hutch, but
Right. But I mean,
Hutch is untouchable.
yeah, no, Hutch is here, and I'm so happy that he's maintained throughout this whole process. But yeah, I mean, in regards to that question from Trap, I mean, honestly,
I don't think he was active or complicit in Schloss. I honestly think
yeah,
that he was the one, and I think we talked about this a little bit. It might have been offline. I would have been shocked if he'd have been told ahead of time and he'd have gone along with it.
yeah, I really don't think he would have. I think that was very much a last minute thing. And not to
I think Wiener knew well ahead of time.
like
I have
no,
no idea Nolan came, no idea, but
no
I
idea.
am like 90% certain that Wiener knew and was actually recruiting the other way. He was part of the burner phone brigade.
That
I just came
wouldn't
up with
shock
that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that name. I just came up with that.
me. I'm proud of you too, man.
I like alliteration.
Hey, I can't not appreciate good alliteration. But on that same token, one other thing to keep in mind on the early front, at no point did he ever change his profile on Twitter. And I know that that's not like the most indicative thing, but the man was very clearly
But
torn
he
on the
changed
message.
it once he got hired here.
Yeah, he immediately changed it and said,
And
I'm
let's be honest, didn't he look like a hostage in those pictures in the press
the
conference?
the fact that you actually had to Photoshop him in a previous A&M uniform thing where he's smiling to get him to smile wearing Texas gear. That tells you all you need to know. Like, and I love what Jay Arnold said. It's like, yeah, me and Early got a lot in common for real.
Yes.
I can go to Austin for about 4 days, but then I need to go home.
And I'm out. I'm out. Yeah, that was classic from Jay. While we're sitting on it, we'll go ahead and just the other ones that popped up in response on Twitter.
Sure.
I don't know if we had any on Instagram if you want to check that.
Yeah, I
But
can check, but
like Tracy Ray said, she thinks perfect because all the players, current and former, seem to love him. But I don't think it's a seem to love him. By the way, they absolutely love him. He is a player's coach, absolutely. I guess what do y'all think about him not having been a head coach before? And she goes on to say he seems ready, and I'm glad we didn't have to steal a head coach from another team. So
yeah,
this will kind of circle back to where we were when we were first talking about this a few minutes back. Um, Look, if you can get a Vitello, if you can get an O'Connor, like you just do it. Okay, like it's I. I mean, I know that it kind of hoses the other school too, but it's just this round robin of everybody getting screwed. But I think what was really important was that once we got past those initial like just swing for the fences, the field was open, and there were some people that didn't make that cut into the interviews. You know,
yeah.
people that we thought would.
Hmm.
Um, but the fact that he was able to handle his interview the way he did and move him into the pole position, I think speaks worlds of him. I think and I could be completely off base on this, but he's got a young family. He loves it here in College Station. He loves the A&M program. He has a ton of loyalty to this place, and I think it was easy for him to stay here. And that's where I also think that he got blindsided because yeah, I don't think he saw this stuff coming. So he was happy to stay here for a while, knowing that at some point Jim Schlossnagle would be done, and whether or not he had gone on to take a head coaching position somewhere else and come back, or if
Yeah,
he had somehow been in line like the head coach in waiting, the term of death. But
yeah,
if he were ever elevated to that position, but I think he was comfortable, like not comfortable in the sense like he was sitting back and coasting, but comfortable in the sense that he was in a position to where he could continue to work on his craft and become a better coach and learn more about, once he finally got his day to shine, right? He would have a process and he would know. And not to say that he's not ready now, but the more years he'd have done that, the better refined he would be. So I think there's something to be said for him not being a head coach yet. And maybe he'd had an opportunity at a small school and decided it was a better opportunity to stay as an assistant coach at a program like A&M as opposed to taking a small time head coaching job, and Lord knows if it works out, right?
well, winning culture and being around a winning culture will eventually grow you into the coach that you need to be a lot of the time. And you'll see that a lot of assistants over the years that have done exceptionally well as head coaches have done so. You want to talk about a great example of that? I mean, just look at Kirby Smart. You talk about what he did over there at Alabama. I mean, he was an assistant for a long time, eventually goes off to Georgia and ends up becoming more or less a modern the guy now in a lot of people's heads as far as like that's the epitome of what a damn good head coach is. In
He's the
fact,
best coach in the nation right now.
yeah, that grows. And so, a guy like Michael Early coming in to a program like A&M has been here, was previously on good staffs, in fact, bringing his buddy Jason Kelly along as a pitching
Yep.
coach from, who's was at Washington as a head coach. I mean, you snag a head coach to come as your um, immediate help in the
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that one's a really interesting one because obviously you look at it and the head coach at Washington and the assistant coach at Texas A&M, or that's not the same level. This is a bit of a step down.
it is.
And I think there's a lot that goes into, and it's not just because, the Pac-12 dissolving. It also keys into what you're talking about is that that relationship that they had was Arizona State, right?
Correct.
And so they worked together before. He obviously believes in Michael Early's abilities.
Yeah.
And from everything that I can tell throughout the baseball world, Michael Early's pretty well respected. For his ability and his ability to really work with players and care.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who've come out and said truly one of the best young minds, especially from a hitting side. And he has been very much an offensive minded person. That's great and good. I like that we're bringing in Jason to kind of really lock in, especially with that relationship. See what happens with these pitchers. Will it be different for Max? Absolutely. But once again, it's up to the guys to make the pitches. And
Absolutely.
and I think that's the big thing to remember here. The regime changes. The head coach has changed, but the players are the ones that have to go out there and win the damn game. And so the fact of the matter is, if you don't see a large number of these portal guys go to Texas, and maybe they stick around here. I mean, a couple are going to run off. Like, Bell ends up over at Auburn. A
Oh
couple
no,
of
Bell went to TCU, didn't he?
was it TCU?
Yeah, Bell ended up at TCU. Great situation for him. He needs to get on the field, and quite honestly, I don't know if he gets on the field here, depending on who comes back.
Fair. And the thing is, like, the guys in those positions, I totally understand. You have to go take advantage of being able to get some playing time. But if we're bringing back guys like, let's say Gavin Grahovic pulls out, comes back to A&M. If Jace pulls out, comes back to A&M, all of a sudden you've got a lot of people looking at A&M as a program right now. Like, hey, everything's there. Just got to go out there and win it. And
Right.
and Early's been there. I mean, he was just in Omaha. And if the rumors are accurate from what I've heard, which is more or less he was the one kind of doing most of the coaching. If that was the case, then I mean that tells you a lot.
When you combine that with the fact that he was just blindsided, is what it sounds like with this
Yeah.
decision. So it's tough. And I get it. And I like when it comes to Aggie loyalty, trust me, I fully understand that. But there are just other factors that have to be considered, quite frankly. And to have a job is one of them, and probably get a substantial pay raise as well. But I think he writes all of that by coming back.
Yeah.
Coming back to the program that he loves and the players that he loves.
Yeah.
Real quick, Marisha 99 also posted, she didn't have a question, but she wanted to say, and I think a lot of us can echo her sentiment. So I'm excited for the team. I'm grateful that the university athletic department had the guts to make an offer to someone with no head coaching experience. The team loves him. Former players love him. I'm sold.
Yeah, and I think that's a big endorsement, was the amount of former players that have come out and said that this is a great hire, and we really excited that A&M's getting in on this. Because a lot of those guys that we're talking, I mean, they've been close to the top of the mountain. They've either made Omaha, or they've been conference champions, or they've been just damn good players on damn good teams. Every single one of those guys that's come forward.
It's been deafening.
Definite.
I mean, honestly, it's been absolutely deafening, the support that that Michael Earley's received, and there's a lot of stock to be put in players that have played for a dude, whether they're still in baseball, whether they're not in baseball. If you get a chance, you didn't catch it this morning on TexAgs Radio, Michael Barish was on there, obviously a fan favorite of ours. His interview was fantastic. He didn't just talk about Michael Earley. He talked about the program. He talked about being an Aggie outside of being an athlete.
Yeah.
And that's what, there are a lot of schools that don't have what we can sell. And he talked a lot about the Aggie network and having conversations because he's wearing his ring. And so there's a lot more to life than just baseball. And these kids understand that. But you also have to be able to integrate their desire to try and improve and see if they can improve their draft stock, or see if they can get drafted and become, big league players.
Yeah.
And so I get, I get all of that. But I love the hire. I'm excited for him again. It's a low risk, high reward kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think in the short term, he provides you probably the best opportunity to keep the roster intact. And we all know the talent on this roster. It's a fantastic roster, and we all saw him play. So his ability to maintain the roster is going to be big. Obviously, that'll be coupled with some NIL stuff. But I think what we've seen, in the past 7 days is the baseball fan base, and honestly, probably Aggies that really aren't big baseball fans, but they just hate Texas, have galvanized, and their support for the program and for NIL is going to continue to increase. You talk about moving the decimal point kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how all that works in, because I get these kids want to get paid too. I totally get it. And when you're the SEC Freshman of the Year, why not go into the portal and just check out your market value? Even if you're not leaving A&M, or you don't have any intention to leave A&M unless they just kind of shaft you on NIL, you come back and say, hey, I've been offered about this number. What you guys got? And that's the world of sports today. And if you don't like that, I mean, I get it. You can not like that. I'm not a huge fan of it. But I'm a huge fan of these kids getting paid. So there's probably somewhere in the middle that I land on all that. Sure. But there's going to be some stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do specifically with baseball. And that's where you find, I think, a lot of these kids in the portal, they are testing their market value. And the more, the further down the road we get with this Wild West kind of approach, I think you're going to see a lot more of that, is where the portal gets absolutely flooded with a bunch of kids that really don't have any intention of going anywhere, but they want to test their market value.
Sure.
Um, they want to test it up against their agent, what their agents are telling them, and they want their agents to go help them test their market value. And so, but like seeing Ollie come back out of the portal was big. Seeing Shot, I mean, it sounds like he's going to get his COVID exception, which is crazy that there's still people that can apply for that. Chestnut applied for it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really I wish him all the best, and I think he's out the door. But if Prager wants to come back, I don't think you're going to hear me complain. We do need some right-handed pitching.
Yeah.
We're good on lefties, I think, but we do need some right-handed pitching. But I think this is just a point to really be excited for the future of Aggie baseball. I think there's going to be some hesitance, and I think that's totally fair between him not being a head coach, and I get that you're going to be hesitant, and then also just the maybe not the number of players in the portal, but the quality of the players, of our players that are in the portal. So there's going to be some trepidation until they finally land somewhere, right?
Right.
I mean, if we lose everybody that's in the portal, it's going to be pretty devastating.
Sure.
So,
We
you have
definitely
to
don't.
hope that, yeah. So you have to hope that some of, in the first 10 phone calls that Michael Earley made, I bet half of them were players and half of them were coaches trying to fill his staff.
Yeah.
And I do want to touch on the staff thing. So nothing's been officially announced yet,
Right.
but Kelly is pitching. And the name that's floated for hitting, I think, is fascinating
Yeah.
in Longley.
Yeah, Longley's a very interesting name to get thrown around, especially considering where he just was. And so if you bring him in, and from what I've heard, he's been a phenomenal coach at his job over there in Texas. So I don't hate the move by any means.
I mean, look at Texas offensive numbers under him. He clearly improved their hitting. I think it's interesting that Tulowitzki's going back. But I think Longley would be a great pull, not just because of obviously his hitting coaching prowess, but from what I understand. And again, I don't follow Texas baseball recruiting. That may be one of the last things I will ever follow in my entire life. Like, I will watch underwater knitting before I will care about that.
Huh.
But from what I've heard, he's an exceptional recruiter as well. So now you have multiple exceptional recruiters on a club that includes West Coast recruiting prowess.
Yeah.
Because I mean, let's be honest, baseball out in California is legit.
It is.
California, Texas, Florida, those are your baseball powerhouses for talent. And even though the portal plays a big part in it, NIL is making it to where you're getting more of these high school kids in. They're like, you know what? I don't want to go sit on a bus for 3 years and drive from Kalamazoo to Wichita Falls, and spend my nights in a flea bag motel, when I can make money, get an education, and probably develop just as well, if not better, because the minor leagues is a business, man. You either get better or you're cut. Here, they stick with you.
Well, not to mention, you spend your 3-4 years at a major university and you happen to be a hotter level talent. The amount of money you're going to make NIL wise versus what you would make in the minors is astounding. I mean, it's crazy. You've got these kids straight out of high school. Which, years and years ago, it's like, well, you got to take advantage of this now. You have to jump and try to kickstart your career now. And that was always the pitch. But the thing is, that's not the case anymore. That's not the case for baseball. It is way more beneficial for you to go in, get paid, do it at a high level with a rabid fan base that's going to support you. I mean, if you're over here playing at, playing at Durham or wherever in a minor league setting, I mean, sure, there's some good support on some of these stops, but if you're down in like single A, double A ball in some, podunk town somewhere, you're not necessarily going to get that same level of exposure, much less the love that you'll receive at a college like A&M.
Well, it's a complete 180 from 5-10 years ago, where you signed this. It was like the Rob Childress days, right? Sign one of the best recruiting classes in the country, and 2 of them get to campus.
Yep.
Well, now you have NIL, and on top of that, you just kind of mentioned it, and we've talked about this throughout, probably the last couple of years, is the amount of exposure that baseball and even softball are now getting on a national stage, excuse me, on television.
Yeah.
I can literally watch almost every single A&M baseball game all year long, minus the one-off where they like go to Sam and Sam Houston uses their camera crew kind of thing.
Right.
It's almost the same with softball minus the invitationals. You can like the exposure they get And then not just the exposure, think of the environment you're playing in. You're playing in parks that will rival any minor league park out there for crowd and quality.
Correct.
And all of that plays into you getting better. Going to play baseball in a library, I mean, I get it that baseball is a one-on-one kind of sport, but there's a lot more that goes into being a successful baseball player than just swinging a bat and running. It's it's the I mean, and I know that the best are able to tune out the environment, but using the environment to your advantage.
Yeah.
You being in front of those crowds every day and learning to phase out the crowd and lock in and focus. And you don't have to do that when there's 130 people in for dollar beer night in the middle of Alabama.
Right.
And so then that's what it's done worlds for the game. The talent that we are now seeing come to campus and play baseball, and because it's a you're here for 3 years kind of thing, it's a commitment that they have to make, but it's a commitment that they're starting to understand, especially as we see the minor league club system really kind of morph and change a lot. Especially with the changes that the MLB draft has made. There's not as many rounds to begin with. So why wouldn't you go develop yourself? And I get it. You're like, these are major league coaches. I mean, they're minor league coaches. No offense, but they're minor league coaches. There are coaches just as good, if not better, at a lot of these college programs. And you're starting in the SEC and the ACC. You go play in one of those two conferences, you're going to get developed to the best of your ability, and the best of your effort. Your ability and your effort, those two combined with the coaching and mentoring that you're going to get. Not to mention you're getting a degree.
Imagine, if you will, like literally take any single or double A team. Let's just say, like, let's take the double A Midland Rockhounds and you put them in a matchup with A&M baseball. Who wins that game? Ask yourself that real question.
Yeah.
I truly think, especially like these ACC, SEC, the bigger programs that are running around out here, I would say they're probably as competitive with those style of teams. I really do.
Well, it reminds me a lot of SEC football, but in baseball, you really do have to add in the ACC and somewhat in football. But the rich get richer. They see this occurring, and these kids want to play at these programs. But because there's a million baseball players in the United States, at a high school level, these other conferences do get some good talent, some fantastic talent that maybe had a chance to go to the minors, go to school, develop, see if you can turn into a minor league, major league baseball player. And so it's done again. It's done worlds for the sport. Softball. The best softball players generally are, in college. That's because the pro leagues are so sparse and they're just not supported enough yet. And if they'll ever get to that point, I don't know. But
Yeah.
But baseball, they have the support. They have the support system. You have the education. You have clearly you're seeing the development. You look at the draft, and back in the day, the first 15 players were all out of high school, right? And half of them were pitchers, left-handed pitchers, and there was always like a catcher thrown in there. And then maybe around pick 9 or 10, there was a kid from college. And now you're seeing the development of college players overtaking the MLB draft.
Yep.
Which in and of itself that's the easiest selling point on the planet. Like, look how many college kids are going, man. And they're going there with college degrees.
They're going there with college degrees. A very stable environment when you're out of college, because that college is not going anywhere. That team's not going anywhere. You're going to be out here developing your talent, developing your skills under very qualified coaches that are going to get you to that next level. That's showing.
Oh, 100%. And look, you're delaying where you're going to be for 3 years, but in 3 years, you're also going to be more mature emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
And you'll have been able to literally focus on nothing but school and baseball. We're not busting you all over the planet. And when you do go somewhere, you're going to play in some of the greatest environments in college baseball, which will rival anything from Double A down. And I dare to say probably at least half of Triple A.
At least, because fact is, you've got a lot of good AAA teams out there in good environments. Sure, places that have been built up for years and years and years, but
a bunch that suck.
A ton that sucks. So it's not.
If you guys have never been to like double and AAA ball games, go to a couple and you'll know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, the quality's not there, and we've seen it. I went and watched. Honestly, this is kind of a funny story. So me and my buddy James, we went on a trip out to Vegas. We went and watched the Aviators play against, I guess it was, they're playing Salt Lake City. They're playing the Bees. And
Mhm.
we're watching that game, and I mean, the poor kid had just came up from Double A into Triple. It was his first outing in Triple A pitching. He had an infinite ERA by the end of the game. It was just he didn't get an out.
Yeah,
It
up there,
was
pitch batting practice.
it was rough. We're just watching this game like, oh Lord, where's the quality at?
Yeah. And well, and when you get to the farm system, a lot of times these kids get rushed between levels as well. And
True,
it's based solely on need and not by readiness.
exactly.
So it's just so much of an easier sell, I think, in college baseball than it was 5-10 years ago. And it's literally one of those proof is in the pudding kind of things. And that's where 10 years ago, are you making this move? Probably not. Like you
Probably.
probably need to go find a head coach from somewhere, right? But Michael Earley understands the current state of college athletics and college baseball. Michael Earley understands baseball. That's very clear.
Yeah.
And Michael understands Aggie baseball.
Yeah.
And if you take all of those, if those, you separate those out, I mean, they're all right traits, but when you can pack it all into one guy, and then just the support obviously shows that he relates to players and he's a player's coach. You can't ask for a whole lot more.
No.
And you're
And
not going to hire a sitting head coach.
yeah, and so I mean, you're gonna bring, you're bringing Michael Early up a level in terms of what he's gonna bring, and is it a gamble?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, it's a gamble. But is it a worthwhile gamble to throw a little money at? I think so. I mean, you're at a point where you've had the last two hires that you've made at big position sports here on campus between obviously you went and got Buzz Williams, who's a solid hire, but you go out and make this big splash hire with Jimbo Fisher, this big splash hire with Jim Schloss. You bring these guys onto campus, and sure, Jim's a proven winner. Jim Schloss is absolutely a proven winner. Everybody can tell you that.
Nobody can sit there and honestly look you in the eye and say he's not a good coach.
No, he's a damn good coach. But as far as being a man, that's your own particular flavor that you could kind of figure out one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't know
But
that the jury's even still out on that, but we got a dude of character, and it was a tough situation he was put in. It really was. Um, the biggest things we're looking for now are the official announcements of his staff. Apparently, there's one big domino left to drop, and I kind of thought it would be the head coach coming from Washington to take a pitching coach job. Apparently, that's not it. So
okay,
I still think there's some interesting announcements to come.
no question. So plenty to get in on that.
And I
So
don't think it has to do with coaches either, because it's obviously the dude from Washington. I think it's Longley. So it's Kelly and Longley. I think he keeps Hutch. What he has one more, right? One more position to fill.
yeah,
So that'll be a name that maybe none of us know, or maybe he goes and gets Cliff Pennington. I don't know.
thanks. Yeah.
But because you'd be crazy to think that Cliff wouldn't at least field that phone call to come back home.
Oh, and like he's done great things at Dallas Baptist. He absolutely has. But I think given an opportunity to come back to the house, it's not a bad deal.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to watch him fill out his staff. I'm excited for it.
Mhm.
And I'm really interested to hear what this big domino left to fall is. I think I have an inkling, but I'm not a rumor starter, so I'm just going to keep my inkling to myself.
Fair.
One more big announcement before we wrap up. I heard this morning, Chancellor Sharp has decided to retire next year. That's a huge announcement, and there are obviously a million different sentiments about the guy.
Sure.
He can take the trophy he made for Jimbo Fisher, and he can take it with him. The open-ended trophy. But there's a lot to be said for a lot of the things that have happened while he's been here at A&M, and I think deep down he always tried to make decisions that, for the most part, were what he thought was best for A&M.
Yeah.
Now I will say, if there's one, I'll celebrate just a long time of serving, Texas A&M, as an Aggie. The other thing I really hope he takes with him is the Levy contract. So if he takes the trophy and the Levy contract, he will go out an absolute legend. But just think about everything that's happened in his tenure, and just how things shook out. There's been good and there's been bad, but I got to know him when I was a Yale leader, and I just personally, I just like to thank him for his service to A&M. There's been some tumultuous times that he's been around for, and so I wish him the best of luck in retirement. We still got another year of him, but unlike Jim Schlossnagle, he's given us a year to find a replacement. So
That's a positive out of the situation if you had to take something. Like I said, obviously a million different sentiments on him. I've had my run-ins one way or the other with some of the things that he's done at this school, but obviously some other things that were good. It's a mixed bag, I think is the best way to look at Chancellor Sharp. Um,
I
so
am excited though that we do have a year to find the proper replacement. And that's the thing is people got to understand this is not a board of regents job. Like this is a political position. It's going to be a political appointment. So temper your expectations just because anytime politics gets involved, everybody loses. but
indeed.
but
Uh,
yeah, so outside of that, man, it's just hopefully within the week you got by the time we sit down next week and do this, we've got answers on the staff and it's all been announced and we can really kind of dig into the staff a little bit. And then
hopefully,
we're starting to get into the lean weeks and days of the summer when it comes to sports news.
sure.
But when I get back from Scotland, we'll be able to address, although it'll be, let's see, because it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks till I leave, 2 weeks till SEC media days. I'm not big on rehashing media days. I think they're stupid. And when we first got to the conference, I literally would take the day off and watch the day that A&M was on it. And now I realize it's just really kind of dumb.
Yeah.
It's a lot of dog and pony show kind of stuff. And you can get all the clips on the back end. But what I will say as I close up is I hope everyone has an incredibly safe and wonderful and happy July 4th, and celebrate the independence of this country and wear your red, white, and blue and drink beer and be obnoxious and fire up the smoker. I got a new smoker, so I'm not dancing on the screen, but it's on the inside. I'm dancing. And with Hayden shot hopefully coming back, I'll be dancing to a rattling bog maybe.
Oh, he's coming back. He made his intentions quite clear
Yeah.
on Twitter, which is awesome to see. Yes, definitely enjoy your 4th of July, folks. We're obviously be safe. Don't do anything stupid.
Please be safe. Please, for the love of God, be safe. July 4th it's a time and it's on Thursday, so we get a super long weekend. It's a
Yeah.
great time to celebrate. Please be safe. There's a massive number of DUIs that occur the morning after. So make a plan, get a ride. There's absolutely no reason to get behind the wheel at all, ever, but especially this weekend when so many people are going to be out and about. If you're going on the water, please be safe. Practice safe boating practices. Don't drink and drive on the water. All right. Feel like I'm talking to my kids here, but seriously, I want y'all to be safe and have an awesome 4th. Absolutely. Obviously, it's one of my favorite days of the year. So
But it's an all timer. I mean, I'm always got great memories of my 4th of July. We'd go out in Carlsbad, right there on the Pecos River. We had old US they call it the George Washington. It's an old paddle boat that was on the Pecos River in Carlsbad, and we would ride on that paddle boat out into the middle of the river and got to watch the fireworks on the opposite shore, which was always entertaining for the town.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
You were paddleboarding before paddleboarding was cool.
oh yeah, like old
Nice.
paddleboard boat. Yeah.
I'll give you my favorite 4th memory because now that you brought something up, my favorite 4th memory, I was in DC and we decided to actually we got access to get into the cemetery after it closed, because Tomb Guards we could get in and out.
Yeah.
We drove my truck in and down, we call it the punch bowl. It's down at the bottom of the football field, which is that big field, in the front of the tomb, down
Yeah.
below the stairs. So we were down past the field, by the punch bowl and turned on the radio, to the Capitol 4th, brought out some lawn chairs and it's peaceful because it's just us. Right. And I mean, no disrespect. Look, when you work in a cemetery for years, it becomes kind of your home. And I know that's really weird to say, but it's kind of your home. And getting to spend the 4th, like literally surrounded by heroes, right?
Yeah.
And I brought out this tiny little grill, it was like the size of a postage stamp, and did a couple of hot dogs, and we watched the fireworks out over the Potomac and listened to the 1812 overture on the radio. And
As you should.
it was absolutely perfect. So, and that's something I do every year is watch the Capitol 4th on TV. I love it. But yeah, that was a real special one that year. But yeah, so y'all, make some memories this 4th, have a great time, be safe, make some memories. And we'll see you on the backside of the holiday. right?
Absolutely, we will. A couple little notes on my end. Number one, if you're in the Burnett area, Wednesday, Carson's playing an acoustic show up there with Travis, so go check that out.
Always squeezing one in before the holiday. Right on.
Squeezing one in before the holiday and then one immediately after the holiday. So on the 5th, we will be up at Tannehill's Tavern in Fort Worth in the Stockyards. So if you're in the Fort Worth area celebrating the 4th of July weekend, come party with us. We'll be in the Stockyards just south of Billy Bob's in at Tannehill's Tavern. So go check that out. And also, if you would like to go on to the website, carsonjeffrey.com, we have our vinyls. They are ready to go. So be sure to go check those out. Fairweather Cowboys record is out into the world for physical media for the first time. So jump in
You
on
know,
that.
I'm happy to fund this, so maybe we'll grab a handful of them. I'll pay for a handful of them and get you all to sign them, and we'll do a little giveaway maybe after I get back from Scotland.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So yeah, keep an
Get the
eye out.
band to sign them, and I'll pay for them, and we'll do some giveaways if you want some vinyls.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. So we'll screw up for that. In the meantime, I'm going to be doing my absolute best to hopefully feel better, take more meds.
Yeah, go smash some emergency and drink some water. Real quick, if you didn't see it, the Astros Foundation College Classic down in the juice
Yes.
box got announced. If you haven't seen it, it'll be A&M, Mississippi State, and Tennessee with Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Rice. So don't expect to play Mississippi State or Tennessee.
No,
But you get to play Arizona, Oklahoma State, and Rice. So
I have.
that's quite a field. I mean, you have literally the last two standing in college baseball that are going to play in the same classic. So we should be flooding the juice box, and I expect to see a ton of Tennessee fans, and we can all meet back up and talk about how we dislike Texas.
Yeah. And those games and times have all been announced too. So A&M is the last game all 3 days. We are hosting Arizona. We're playing Arizona first, then Oklahoma State, then Rice. So go ahead and start gearing up for that next year. Obviously, that'll be Houston's always a fun tournament down there, and we hadn't done it in a little while, so I'm looking forward to running back down there. Should be awesome.
Absolutely.
So this is Roy May. I am Rob White. We are the RedAss Podcast. Thank you so much for checking in. We will be back next week, hopefully with some hires completely sorted out, as well as players back from the portal, hopefully. And
some from some schools headed into the portal, which I just saw.
yeah, maybe some that are coming in. So we got plenty to talk about then. Thanks, Gig'em. Beat the hell out of the summer, man. It's hot.
It's already hot. Again, happy and safe 4th, y'all. Gig 'em.
Gig'em.